And the Lord said unto Cain, Where is Abel thy brother? And he said, I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, What hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground. And now we know that the blood of the innocent cries out from the ground. The murder of Gary Beverly, an innocent man who was caught up in all this bullshit, cries out from the ground. Bobby Finch's murder, a man who was innocent and caught up in all this bullshit, cries out from the ground. Tupac Shakur, a man who was caught up in all this bullshit, his blood cries out from the ground. Biggie Smalls, his blood cries out from the ground. And it's time for all of you to join with me and relentlessly pursue the truth of all these murders. Let's look at what the newspaper said about Bobby Finch. Captain Stephen Roller of Compton Police Department said Bobby Finch, believed to have been a one-time bodyguard in the recording industry, was targeted in an apparent drive-by shooting while waiting for a friend. I'm going to release this old video that I did of Bobby Finch's murder. A lot of it is text, so you'll have to follow along and read the text at the same time you listen to the video, and so it won't lend itself to just casual listening. But I'll just say this. I submitted a FOIA request for information about the murder of Bobby Finch, and I was denied. I never received anything. Well, why is that significant? That's significant because this is one of the murders that was purged from the files of the Compton PD and was not turned over to the sheriffs. This was one of the murders that was purged. Remember, there were 575 murders in the 7 years leading up to disbanding the Compton Police. 8 murders that happened the last week of the Compton PD before the vote. One of those murders was Gary Beverly. And Gary Beverly was shot because Omar Bradley, if he'd have been killed, the vote would have never happened and Compton PD wouldn't be shut down. And he was a lookalike for Gary Beverly. Omar was a lookalike for Gary Beverly. Gary Beverly was a lookalike for Omar. They worked together. So somebody leaving Omar Bradley's place of work, who looks just like Omar Bradley, is killed the day after he's threatened by former Compton PD Eric Paradin at the meeting for public comment. Now, so what do we know? We know 575 murders in the 7 years leading up to the disbandment of the Compton PD. We know that 275 of those murders were unsolved. We know that Reggie Wright Sr. was in charge of homicide, and he was the one that was investigating the murders in Compton. And we know that 251 of those murder case files, the unsolved murders, get purged from Compton PD, and those murders are not turned over to the sheriffs. We know that 24 murders were turned over to the sheriffs. We know that one of those murders that was turned over to the sheriffs was Gary Beverly. And we also know that the shells, not the actual bullets, were missing in that file. They don't even know what gun was used. And yet the coroner took 2 bullets out of Gary Beverly's body. Those bullets never made it into the sheriff's evidence. And because it was an educator who was an innocent man, it was classified as one of the unsolved cases, and that case file was completely purged when it was handed over to the sheriffs, because the sheriffs don't know anything. They said there were no shell casings found. There were no eyewitnesses, even though we know there was an eyewitness. So we're starting to see a pattern here, and Bobby Finch's murder was purged from the case files. Why was that murder purged? Well, maybe it points to Compton PD. And I'm going to play you the Bobby Finch videos so that you can see them.
Okay, today we're going to dig into Bobby Finch. So what got Bobby Finch killed? He wasn't a drug dealer. He was a bodyguard, and he was bodyguarding for some very important people. One of his family members reached out and said, in a conversation I had with him 48 hours before his death, he mentioned meeting with Keith Davis and warned me to be careful because the South Side will be getting dangerous, still refusing to give me detail. Kevin Hackey was interviewed by Fred Miller and Russell Poole. Mr. Poole, okay? Finch. Mr. Hackey. Lawrence Finch, with the Compton School Police. Before Bobby was killed that morning, I was in, maybe I hadn't got to the plane there yet, but it was that Tuesday morning before I got to Vegas. I called Reggie and I said, Reggie, Finch's brother just got killed. How do you know about that? Whatever. I mean, the dispatcher at the Compton School Police, Barbara, just called me. This occurred within like 3 or 4 minutes because one of the officers from Compton College, because Compton College Police, Mario, who also, he works part-time for Compton School District Police, where Bobby lived, was like within 2 blocks of the college. So being they heard the gunshots, Mario was the first guy there as soon as Bobby got shot. And you know, I called Reggie 3 or 4 minutes later, and the incident just occurred. Because when Mario called for help, you know, the Compton College paramedics, our units were there right then. There is no way in hell Reggie, being in Vegas, Reggie would have known that soon if they hadn't already set it up. Why would they set it up? End of tape. Mr. Miller. We're on now. Mr. Hackey. Okay, let me rephrase this. Finch was a setup. He walked out to his car, got in the car, going to take off. Some guy pulled up in a sedan and pumped a couple of rounds through the car. He left his house. Based on the statement that Reggie had made to me, he basically said to me, "Don't mention that to Suge. I already know about it." And I'm like, well, you know, how did you know? This just happened within the last 3 or 4 minutes. "13 bullets were fired. 12 of those bullets hit the body of Bobby Finch. This was obviously a killer who was not worried about getting caught. He wasn't in a hurry. He took his time. 12 shots out of the 13 hit Bobby Finch. Was this somebody that was protected by the police? Was this a corrupt cop? We don't know, but we do know this. Reggie Wright Sr. was the investigating officer on this homicide, and this homicide was never solved. I think we're starting to get to the bottom of all of this. More later.